Good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Roscoe. Mayor Roscoe.
Present.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember London.
Here.
Vice Mayor McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss. Councilmember Sardinius.
Here.
Councilmember Vasquez.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Vice Mayor, lead us.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Okay, in the For What It's Worth department, talking to a number of my colleagues, mayors, and just to give you another perspective, I think the Aventura budget hearing lasted about 15 minutes, the Doral about 20 minutes. So, and by the way, yes, and
Make a motion to adjourn?
yeah, and the Aventura mayor told me they've had the same millage for 29 years. So, but with that, let's get going. I'm sure it'll be easy going tonight too.
Heard the other day about Peter Harrison's passing. Thought to send condoling thoughts to Nancy, family, and friends.
Thank you very much. Let's have a moment of silence. Peter Harrison and his lovely wife, Nancy Doak Harrison. Thank you very much. Okay,
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is public comments.
we'll do public comment. First speaker, Charles Collins, come forward.
Charles Collins, 1121 Crandon Boulevard, F205. Speaking of memories, Merritt Steerheim is having, those of you that knew him, and he died, he's having a public memorial tomorrow at the zoo at 1 or 12, I believe. Anyway, that's not what I came to speak on. Since this is the last time we're together, I just want to go on record. As Joe knows, I was a longtime electrician with the county, and before that, I've got a lot of experience in burying wires and cables. And I just want to register my thoughts on the process of the Big Dig. No matter which way this goes, I think these projects could be bifurcated. I don't see anything in the reports other than some money we save on milling and paving that would necessitate us stopping undergrounding and going, and waiting for something. And I think, well, that's enough for tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ann Tainter.
Ann Tanner, 170 Ocean Lane Drive. I was raised in Miami Shores. I came here in 1966 because I like the atmosphere of a small village. Obviously, we've expanded tremendously, but one of the reasons we incorporated was to get away from big government. I'm sorry to say, I think we are now big government. I hope you look at that and looking at the budget. There's a lot of need for transparency that I don't see. Maybe more detail in what we're doing and the research behind it would be helpful. Our wish list seems to have turned into a carte blanche to-do list. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nick Lopez Jenkins.
Nick Lopez Jenkins, 550 Ocean Drive, apartment 7A. I was going to come here and talk about two topics, but I will defer the parade topic to to my fellow parade committee members, and I wanted to thank you guys in advance for the funding for the Youth Council this time around. Just to give you an update on, they have, ever since Oscar, myself, Brett, and Mary Stevens helped bring it back post-COVID. It has been a fantastic organization. They basically don't need any of us anymore. They're pretty much self-sustaining as it is, putting together great events. And I think it's just another example of how this village invests in its community. And it really reaches people, and I think it really has them engaged. And I see a bright future for all of them, whether it be through civic service or through public office. And once again, just want to thank you in advance for that.
Thank you. Next speaker, Luis de la Cruz.
Luis de la Cruz, 640 Allendale Road, Key Biscayne, Florida. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, all of you, you know why I'm here. I wouldn't be here if the village of Key Biscayne had taken proper care of its stormwater facilities. And they didn't, and we didn't do anything about it until we now have what I believe is a runaway train with a totally over-designed system going forward to rip out our presently existing system and replace it with something else. I personally believe that our present system, if it was properly maintained, would be perfect for what we have going right now. It may not be enough for 2040, 2050, but if we add 15 years to this system's life, that's 15 more years that we add to the next system's life. That's a lot of life, okay? And I can tell you that that item that you have for $575,000, which is more than enough, I don't know that it needs to be that big, but $135,000 of that item could be used to clean every single of the 27 wells that the village to today still has not properly maintained. And it hasn't been, those wells have not been cleaned for more than 10 years. Who knows what they look like inside? They could be 15 years. So with that particular item would help put us back where we should have started. We should never have hired an engineering firm in order to redesign a system. We should have hired them to look at what we had and fix our issues. They would have, if they would have done their job correctly, they would have inspected the system that we have. They would have realized that it hadn't been maintained in 15 years. And they maybe would have come back with, hey, let's fix this first. I mean, I don't know, because $9 million or $10 million of design fees would have gone down the drain for the time being. So I'm not sure if that's not an inherent conflict of interest, asking a company that's going to benefit by having to replace a system be the one that's telling you what you should do with it. There's so much wrong with this that, I think it's going to take the next council members to get elected here, because I don't think that you guys are going to pull back on this, in all sincerity. But that's what you should do, okay? What you should do is you should take a pause on just the part that is the storm drainage. Get it working at its optimum condition, and get that, and then look at it for 2 or 3 years and see where we are. If we need to replace it, then we'll know. As a matter of fact, once you inspect it, hopefully you will pass this item so that you can know what it is. Once you inspect it, you will know, because you'll know how much of it is broken and decide whether you want to do it or not. Okay, so, please, start doing right by this project. And the utilities should be started tomorrow.
Thank you.
Underground in the utilities.
Next speaker, Jocelyn Torres.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Torres, 161 Crandon Boulevard, apartment 121, Key Biscayne. I agree. I'm a support Luis de la Cruz proposal for the video inspection and cleaning and the remaining wells, catch basins, and outfalls to prevent flooding. And I kindly ask you to consider this and to not approve the budget until you do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Alexandra Dapp.
Alexandra Pop. So as long as I've lived in Key Biscayne, and for 2 years I've been volunteering at a zero waste culture, and it's a composting community. And it's an amazing community that I've become a part of, where every Saturday I've helped people from the island be able to dispose of in a more environmentally friendly way of their organic waste, and to give them an alternative to having this end up in landfills. I've educated them on the process of composting. I've experienced it firsthand at Bill Baggs Park, where we process it, turning the soil and letting it become fertile fertilizer that is very organic, and it's great for the community, which we give back to, and let them use it however they would like. And it's been a pleasure working with them. I've met so many amazing people from Key Biscayne, such as Patty here, who comes every Saturday as well. And working at Bill Baggs as well has let me become more insightful on how much effort goes into becoming a green community, but how worth it is because of the great effect that we're having on the island. And I'm asking you guys to just recognize how important a zero waste culture is for the people of Key Biscayne, and the effect that it's had on me as a student. And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great work. Next speaker, Michelle Esteves.
Good evening, Michelle Esteves, 425 Grapetree Drive, 204. I am not here to complain, not to kill anybody. I'm here to praise the manager and the council for my little things that I have passion for the community. For the July parade, I would like to, on behalf of the committee, to proudly report to you that the parade this year was one of the largest parades. Nobody fainted. It was very successful. And the cost of the parade was $76,152, in which the village have signed on the budget towards the parade $45,000. And we only submitted $35,000 invoices to the village. So thank you for, and if that's roll over, because this year was a election year, and politicians pay. It's the only ones that pay, and no pay, they make a contribution to the parade. So that's what helped us too. So thank you for supporting the 4th of July parade. The zero waste. What can I tell you what this organization and this volunteer does for our community? I personally, with the authorization of the board at the square, for years, we recycle batteries. We have containers there to recycle batteries. And in April, when the village do the recycling, I save all those batteries in 5-gallon paint tanks to save them, to bring them then to the recycling in April. Usually, I will bring between, 15, 20, 5 gallons. It was very hard for me during all these years to do this work and to volunteer to the community. This past April, unfortunately, I took one of the containers on the hallways and was already all the acid burned the bottom of the container. The whole acid of the batteries went into my legs. I was burning a little bit, thank God I was near one of the salons, so I was able for them to throw me water and all that. So I got all upset, and I dumped all the tanks and everything, and no more batteries recycling at the square. So Zero Waste will take this with the assistance of the manager that I reached to help to him, and a lot of people continue to us showing at the square to do this. So I hope that we find a location for zero waste to assist them in relocating the batteries collection. And last but not least, safety for me. Thank you, Chief, thank you for, no, he's not there, he's outside, for the crossing guards at Mast Academy. Bravo. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That is such a addition for safety for the students crossing there, and they have not been, not incidents, but at some time when I leave the island and at the time of they are close calls anyway. People is turning here and there and kids trying to cut the light. So thank you for, I know with the government is not perfect. I know that we're going to be in disagreement many times, even when I was sitting on the dais. But it is what it is. We have grown too much in the same Allen Square Island. Can we stop? Can we do changes? I think it's a little bit too late because we grow too fast. But there are things that they can be accommodated and things that the council can do, our manager can do, and we as citizens, we bring our opinions to you that most of the time you listen to us. So thank you for preparing a budget. Thank you for your work. And I hope that the village continue to be the safest place in Dade County. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Javier Rodriguez.
Thank you. Hi. Hi, my name is Javier Rodriguez. I live in 600 Grape Tree Drive, apartment 3 ES. I wanted to talk as well about zero waste, you know, the community and how important it is. My son Pablo, who has not been able to be here today, you know, works with Alex and other, you know, wonderful young people that go every Saturday to the market to collect the organic waste and, you know, transform that into soil. Just want to let you know that I think it's super important that these kind of local organizations get as much support as possible from the city, from the village, in terms of, you know, financial support, in terms of, you know, anything that we can do for them is wonderful for the kids. They are an example, you know, they go every Saturday morning, instead of being asleep or, you know, playing video games, they go there and they do something meaningful for all of us, right? So I think it's important to support them and provide them the opportunity to do, you know, more and the best they can. So that's one thing. And the other thing that I wanted to ask is for support for the same, you know, recycling, right? I think, you know, other cities in Europe, you know, in other countries, they provide recycling containers where people can go and you know, collect cardboard or batteries. I think it's super important. I think a lot of people here are concerned about, you know, from being a green community, and I would, you know, request for your support to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Patricia Romano.
Good evening, Patricia Romano, 361 Beechwood Drive. Where do I start? Thank you. Thank you for your service, even though we don't agree many times, or most of the time, but anyway, thank you for your service. Tonight, well, thank you for the 4th of July, because that's the best parade in all the United States of America. So,
Hear, hear.
yes. So let's keep it up and let's keep working on it because the volunteers are great, and thanks to them, we have been getting where we are. But the most important point tonight is about zero waste, recycling, composting, becoming a green city. I was Saturday picking up trash at Bill Bags. We need education, but especially we need to give the help to zero waste for all the things they do, because they are going in the right direction and they need the help of the village. And I think they need more money of what they are getting, because, you know, things need money to become better. So I was reading the budget, and I suggest that you really should move it up a little bit for Elena, for all the teenagers that work there every Saturday. When you go, it has become like a small town reunion, people talking about what to do and all that. So it's very, very important that we help them to grow even more, probably for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mark Freed.
Good evening, Mark Freed, 525 Warren Lane. I'm new here, so I'm trying to figure out whether I speak now about the budget or wait for the public hearing.
Either.
I'll wait for the public hearing, and since I have the opportunity now, thank you everyone for your service for the last 4 years. Appreciate it, and one of us here, the two other will be working with the remainder. So I'm here to kick the tires.
Thank you. Next speaker, no last name, Carol.
Hi, good evening. My name's Carol Lindsay. I live at 177 Ocean Lane Drive, Commodore East, and so I live on Key Biscayne. Again, as some people have said, I want to thank you all for your service too. I know it's volunteer, and I appreciate what you all do, even if we don't always agree. I'm also here for a zero waste. I think it's really important, as you've heard from former commenters, it is to the community to make it more green. It brings the community together. It helps our youth and also older people in general regarding this. Also, it has a lot to do with the budget that you're talking about tonight, because since we are composting, since we're taking food scraps and things like this, instead of putting them on our waste sites, this is cutting back on methane. Methane is a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gases get caught up in our atmosphere like a blanket over the atmosphere, and it reflects heat back to this earth. This heat makes our oceans warmer, which makes our storms stronger. It's gasoline for them. It also leads to sea level rise in the future. In addition, I'm a nurse practitioner, and I teach in the community about the impacts of heat illness from this changing climate. So if we all participate in composting and our community supports it more, it helps against sea level rise and a lot of the impacts from a changing climate that cause us to have to do all of this planning as far as making sure that we pump water out. And it helps with our preventive measures for our health also. It has a lot of positive things, and it helps our community. So I'm here asking you all to continue to support a zero waste and maybe to allocate more monies towards it, because it's a very important thing going on. It's prevention. So maybe in the future we don't have to put so much money into making sure our storm drains are working. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next speaker, Pat Eraso.
Hi, everybody. My name is Pat Eraso. I live at 270 West McIntyre Street, just down the street. Guess what I'm going to talk about? Zero waste culture. But first, I want to say, having worked for Miami-Dade County for 35 years, I am very familiar with what that place, what the commissioners go through, having to listen to everybody say, we really need money for this, we really need money for that. They used to call it, when I worked there, the begathon of everybody coming forward saying we really need money. But I've never appeared before this council. I've lived on Key Biscayne for 43 years. But what Elena is doing with this zero waste culture is truly needed. And a point I really want to make here, and I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but you know, the recycling effort, which has nothing to do with anything that you could do better or worse, the recycling is not doing a lot. The statistics are that 5 to maybe 9% of what is gathered in recycling is actually recycled. That is that's a problem throughout the world. Okay, so that's nothing that, you know, lays at your feet. The point is, though, this composting is really needed. And the council, of course, has a lot of concentration and has been putting forth a lot of programs to focus on sustainability. Well, for sure, composting has to do with sustainability. And as the last speaker, the nurse practitioner, pointed out about the methane that's released from food that spoils is huge. It surpasses everything. So I just want to say that I think that is a community effort that should really be supported. I realize we're in the infant stages of doing something about that, and it's going to be a huge effort throughout the country to get people to pay more attention to that, you know, to get people to really jump in there and support it. But like I said, I've never appeared before the council in my 43 years here, but I really feel like this is something worth pushing forward in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Myra Lindsay.
Good evening, Myra Lindsay, 365 Westwood Drive. I'm here to thank you all. Thank you, Mayor, for what you're doing. Thank you, council members. Thank you, administration. This is one of the toughest meetings of the year, and I'm just sending you good energy and strength. I also, Mayor, to your point, yes, there are a lot of different municipalities that take 15 minutes to half an hour, but with all due respect, they get their budgets like in June. And so it's a lot easier to go through the process and vet the different departments and do your due diligence and have these type of conversations. So I hope in the future, for the sake of, for you all, to make it easier and to make it faster, but also out of respect for residents, if you could please work on getting a proposed budget, not a couple of days before the first hearing, but maybe in June, like the other municipalities do, or July. That would, best practices, and that would be fantastic. It is what we used to do. It works really well, and it goes a little smoother. And I know you guys have a lot of tough decisions to make. I made a point of coming here to thank a couple of you. See, Brett Moss is not here. He may be participating remotely, but I want to thank him. I want to thank Fernando Vasquez and Ed London for sometimes asking the difficult and uncomfortable questions, for not going status quo, and for making sure that things are diligently analyzed and that people understand what is going on, and that you have enough consideration for residents to pivot and to ask questions and to make sure that when you get more information that you are reanalyzing and making the best possible decision, because it's hard to do that, but it's the right thing to do. And I just want to thank you all for being here and doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, public comments is complete. Let's go now to the special presentation, which the manager promised to make it quick, and it has to do with understanding our budget better as we go forward.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate you giving me a few minutes to go over this. This was really directed towards some of the questions that Councilmember Moss had brought up during the first budget hearing, so hopefully he's watching. But I quickly want to go through, go ahead and go back to the steer right one. I quickly want to go through the software we currently use, how we use it right now, how we're going to use it to track this budget and our performance measures, and then also talk about how we can utilize this going forward as we go through our strategy session in the spring. So first, what you see up in front of you right now is our strategic plan, following the steer right principles. And as you can see across the bottom, we have our 5 delivery goals as well as our 2 support goals. And the intent of this is really not to go into detail, but I just want to show you how this works. I'm going to ask Gretchen to open up the one in the middle, which is accessible, connected, and mobile transportation network. And what you can see in there is we have 4 objectives that support that goal. And then in each one of those objectives, we then have subsequent actions, if you'd open that as well. And so you can see, so what we have is we kind of an echeloned goal to objective to action way in which we track the process and the progress of our actions. So this is something that we've been working over the last year or so. What I'm going to ask Gretchen to do is go to the 10 focus areas that we presented in our budget. You can see them across the bottom. You know, we have they're aligned by our goals. Again, if you'd open up Safe and Secure Village, Gretchen, if you would. You can see our 2 focus areas inside of Safe and Secure Villages: ensure community safety and maintain safe streets. So if you would open up Safe Streets, Gretchen, and then underneath Safe Streets, it went away on my things. There you go. We have 4 actions or 5 actions. What do we got there? I can't see. We got 6 actions that we will be tracking to ensure that we have safe streets. So this will be in effect once this budget is passed, and we'll be able to use this information, and it does have performance measures, and we can periodically report back to council as well as post this on our website as well. So this is just a way for the council as well as the community to identify how well we're using the funding and what are we achieving across the village. So my recommendation is we go forward, and Mayor, you and I could talk about this further as we begin to develop the strategy in the spring for the following year, how we implement this software in developing that strategy.
Okay.
If you just on issues, what would happen in one of the yellow shaded areas?
Or even red.
Are the issues enumerated?
Issues. Pull it up.
So you talk about the actual action itself,
So you
Councilmember?
note that some of them are yellow shaded and they reflect issues.
Correct.
As opposed to no issues in progress.
Yes, so the green represents on track. The yellow represents issues, which primarily focuses on internal issues. And we also have a red code, so the red indicates problems. So that can include typically external issues. And then we also have a representation of the color blue, in which that represents achieved. So once the task is completed, we would indicate that as achieved.
So the yellow would tend to indicate internal processes, not necessarily problems.
Right.
Correct.
The red would indicate problems.
Yeah, and they're either major problems or external problems that, issues that we're facing that we have to resolve with an external agency.
Okay.
Is there a component here? Metrics, basically, any way of measuring, we're going to do this. We can do it in a month, a week, a year. It's going to cost $1, 1,000, $1 million. And how do we do that? And how do we penalize or reward? Because the main difference between government and private business, if we don't do something well in private business, we go broke. If we don't do something well in government, we raise taxes. So basically, the question is, how do we make government more efficient? Since we're not a profit organization, since we have the ability to take away, since government gives nothing unless it takes something, which is fine. We want to give first-class services. We're all in agreement, that's for sure. Now, the question is, how do we measure that? How do we reward that? Because I also, in government, and in private world, we're rewarded for doing these things. Here, we basically don't have a bonus system. And I would love to see some kind of reward system put into place for people getting things done quicker and more efficient and more economical, if possible, going forward. But I think the idea of what you're doing is a good first step, but it has to be basically tied together with some, should I say, strict, I don't want to use the word strict, some measurable system of achievement or not achievement, and reward or penalty, to substitute the profit motive.
No, those are
on
good
that.
comments. Although I've never been to any private company that I haven't had to pay for their service, so we do have to pay for those. But as you and I talked earlier today, but yes, each one of these actions does have a performance measure that we measure it by, and it's it's all based on what we're trying to achieve, and it does have a timeline that's tied to it. Unfortunately, in business, we cannot have in government, we cannot have bonuses. However, we do have the ability to apply merit pay when we evaluate our employees.
Well, you can call it merit pay, bonuses, I don't care what you call it. My point is a reward for work well done, or providing a savings, or providing an efficient method of delivery to the community. And, because you say if you treat everybody alike, like you're saying, fine, it doesn't matter if you do a good job or a bad job. Yeah. Same thing. You're taking away the incentive. People are human beings. There's nothing like incentives. We know everybody does the best they can, but sometimes people do a little bit better when there's an incentive involved. That's all. And,
yes.
And you call it merit pay, you call it whatever you want to do, but I just think we should look at that and see how we can employ that going forward to make a more efficient government. That's
we
all.
are, and
Rather than saying add more people, we're great for adding people. I mean, my God, you and I fight all the time about this, both chiefs, myself, get more people, more people, more people. Well, the idea is maybe be more efficient with the people we have and maybe reward them for doing a better job or doing a more difficult job.
No, all good comments, and we started using this software, I believe it was February timeframe, correct? And it's been very effective.
Good.
But we are going to, with the 10 focus areas that we presented you, we've identified what we want to achieve. So we're going to be able to track these very clearly here, and we do have performance measures.
Okay,
and we
good.
do have deadlines, and we'll be able to report those to you.
Gustavo Bernales here is right here. He gave me a list of communities with like 30 or 200 different metrics that we use in government for measurement. I don't know if you'd like to have a copy of that, but I think it might be helpful to add on. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to use all of it or any of it or some of it, but I think some of it would be interesting to look at because, different people have invented the wheel already, and so we don't have to definitely reinvent it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that would be great. In fact, I was at the ICMA conference this weekend, sat next to the city manager of Cincinnati, and we were talking about this, and she, in fact, had 15 members in her measurement section. So if, we want to bring on some more people to help me with that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, why not? You can't do it yourself.
I can't do it myself, yeah. You want to keep staff low, it makes it difficult.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. On the, I just want, maybe you went a little too fast, I didn't get to, but I imagine there is subsets to these, or child measures, how they call them. But how do you measure a thriving and vibrant community in a local market? What are I'm more into the granular stuff. We don't have to get into it,
Yeah.
but just kind of give a perspective of how is it that we're measuring and detecting those measures.
I want to, look, this is something I think is a bigger
Or
topic
maybe we
than
should
our
have a
budget.
workshop,
We
perhaps.
are. And this
with
was something that
council and-
we had planned to present during the strategy workshop in May. Unfortunately, we didn't get the chance to get to it. But yes, we do have, not on this one, this is just tracking the focus, the 10 focus items.
Yeah.
But we do have objectives that support that goal, right? And that's how we measure. We measure at the objective level that would roll up and support that goal.
Yeah, but I would recommend just what I said. Perhaps we could have a budget. A workshop to talk about this specifically, and maybe get council's input on it.
I would love to have that opportunity.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
would
important.
welcome that as well. So,
And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to, like I said, use this to track the 10 focus items. And then what we'll do, probably in the late November, early December time, is we'll create the entire, I'll call it the tree, the goal to objective to action. And then when we come into the springtime during the strategy session, we'll be able to have something in place that we can begin to work from and have it in this system that will allow us to track it as we move forward.
sounds wonderful. Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
I think this is really a very effective modernization of something that we've been doing pretty much all along. If you look in the master plan, the comprehensive plan, you see the same thing. It's just more rudimentarily projected. It's objectives, and then each one is tied to various goals, and each one of those goals is measured in terms of timing and budget and performance and achievement. And that's how master planning works.
Yeah, and this operationalizes it. I get an update from each one of the directors each month. I also have a meeting with each one of the directors each month as we update it. And if you would, why don't you go to the one all the way to the far right, the metrics, and just kind of give the council an idea of what the various metrics we have. You'll see there's many of them. We're going to put these into a report that makes sense. But these are all the different metrics that we're tracking based on the action. Scroll down, you can see them. So again, this is something that is more usable, and it's updated on a monthly basis.
I think Gretchen should get merit pay.
She's done an amazing job setting this up, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay, let's move
Rachel.
on.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the millage resolution. A resolution of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the final millage rate of the Village of Key Biscayne for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025 pursuant to Florida Statute 200.065 trim bill and providing for an effective date.
Second.
Okay, as we usually do, we'll lay this on the table to get to the budget and continue from there. Just for information, I really like the proposed millage of 2.9794, which is a reduction of 4.6%. So I'll be pushing for that. Can I have a motion to lay the millage?
Second.
All
Thank
in
you. All
favor?
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Motion carries.
Next.
The next item is the ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, adopting the budgets for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025 pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida Statutes trim bill and providing for an effective date.
Move.
Second.
Thank
Been
you.
moved and seconded, the items properly before us. Let me open the public hearing on this, and the first speaker is Mark Freed, who wanted to speak on the budget.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Mark Freed, 525 Warren Lane. I looked over the budget and noticed the actual budget in 2022 of $24,350,000. 23 actual, $31,429,500. 24 budget, which hasn't come out for actual, $37,776,000, and the 2025 budget of $39 million. So each year, there's been a pretty big increase, and over the 4 budget years, the total increase is 60% over the 22 budget. During that time, the CPI has risen 20%. So this spending is really exceeding CPI. I was looking at certain items in the budget, such as asset replacement, and there are a few items in there, air conditioners and a generator, but this would go for all of the assets in the village. I question, and it might not be part of the budget, what is the life expectancy of this equipment? What is the maintenance schedule? Are we keeping the maintenance schedule? And is this equipment we're replacing at, before, or beyond the life expectancy? These are all costs we're paying as residents. Brett Moss brought up in the first budget hearing the contract and professional fees that are paid. When I looked through the budget and added up at each different item of contractual and professional, I came to $12,640,000. Brett mentioned hiring someone to come in-house, which may cut a lot of that money out and get the professionals when we need them. So with that, I just think this is the budget's going to get passed. Doesn't mean everything has to be spent. But if What would you rather have? $2 million today or a penny today and double it tomorrow, double it the next day and wait 30 days? Well, if you do that, you're going to have over $10 million. I feel like our budget is the 1 penny, 2 penny, 3 penny, or 1 or 2, 4, 8. Please take it easy on us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mariana Cuervo. Sorry, we didn't get you the first time there.
I'm Mariana Ariano Cuervo, and I live at 360 Heather Lane. And I wanted to talk about zero waste culture, which everybody said a whole bunch about it. But the amount of initiatives that Elena seems to get going, of bringing costumes, furniture that goes to different places that's left out, that we find homes for. It's, you know, what are you using? What can you reuse? What can you not put into the garbage? Because we have a garbage crisis. We are dying here. So this is an important initiative, and all these different things of, you know, the electronics recycling, all these events that go on. And it happens with the force of just one incredibly powerful woman who gets a lot of people going and doing stuff and volunteering. And it's a great community effort. I've gone myself and done sifting and taken kids. It's absolutely beautiful project. And every day she's making us all do things a little more mindfully about our community, about how we're treating things. And that is such an important thing. And we need that voice to be louder and to be more inclusive, and that we maybe take it on as part of what the city needs to do, or the village, because we've got all this garbage and we know what they're doing with it. We can do a lot better than this and set an example. We're small enough. I think that if everybody, you know, really thinks about it and tries to back it, this can make a big change. And it's not something that one person can continue, you know, on her own. And she's got a ton of volunteers, and we're really grateful for it. Thank you for your support. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for all your work.
Next speaker, Nubia Abaji.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Nubia Bahi, 555 Carandon Boulevard, Unit 33. I want to congratulate Zero Waste Culture, because they are doing a great job. And this talk about recycling. And we have to recycle our plant. And I come today to support Luis de la Cruz's idea, exposed early, about the proposal for the founding inspection for the cleaning of the Iceland wells, because we have to use what we have and then sing in a new things. That is special. We talk about the same thing, about recycle. You have to think in what we have first and then think in new things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker, Louisa Conway.
Good evening, Council. Louisa Conway, 151 Crandon Boulevard. I just wanted to comment just real briefly. I know you're passing the budget tonight. It's probably going to be the biggest budget in this century, even when Spain owned us. But I guess my question, or my concern, and this is more for the manager, is why we're looking at grants, and I was looking at your chart on the grants, and we have about 15, I think it was about 15 million that still need to be reimbursed. At the same time, as you're all aware, the governor has cut a lot of grants back to this island that's affected some of the programs. So I guess my question is, or if I was sitting on this council, I'd be asking, how are we going to make that up? Because you've put it in the budget. We're not really even sure we're going to get reimbursed. These are going towards some of these projects, I think 31 projects. So I think that I would like to see some tonight, before you pass the budget, just as council members, to please ask some of these questions. I know you're going to pass it, but at least for the public's benefit, that you're asking some of the diligent questions that a lot of us have on our minds. Again, the projects sound very interesting, but at the same time, is he going to really do all 31? Can we scale that back a bit on the capital projects? We have $55 million. I mean, thanks to Ben and his hard work, he's kept the operating budget at its baseline. He's looking to lower the millage. But I just think that you guys need to ask some of the questions that we in the community have been coming to. We don't think you're listening to us, and yet we want to collaborate with you. It matters to us, the infrastructure in this village. We've all invested here, but the cost is insane and the budget is crazy. I mean, 55 million over when last year we passed a budget of 42, and we had a surplus from that budget of around 6.2 million. Just want you to ask the questions. What happened to the surplus? What happened to the stormwater fees that were collected? Again, I remind you all, in the financial audit, the Stormwater Revenue Fund had collected 1.8 million. 1.4 million was spent. What happened to the rest of it? Of that, how much of that is going towards cleaning the wells or maintaining the wells? I think the public just wants to know more because there's a lot of confusion. We had people coming up saying we have 39 wells, 27 were not cleaned out, only 12 were. So of course it begs the question, if I was a council member, I would be asking what happened to the money. That's all we ask before you pass. I hope you have a really fruitful discussion tonight because it would be beneficial to us as taxpayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that, we close the public hearing. Mr. Manager, want to take us through, and our CFO wants to take us through where we were last time and what changes that we have made, and then we can address some of these items that have come before us.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. It's exciting to be here today to present our proposed budget at the second hearing. We recognize the strain that's been placed on our residents over the last few years. We have definitely looked at trying to offer as much relief as we can, and I think our budget does in fact that. We recommend a reduction of about 4.5% of millage. At the same time, though, we are obligated to continue to run this village, and we do it as efficient as we can, because we want to make sure that the residents do receive the services that they certainly expect. So what we're going to do, and I'll ask Benjamin to go ahead and come forward. We heard you loud and clear at the last budget hearing, so we've made the adjustments in the expenditures that you've asked us to add in. Since that time, we've been able to modify some of the revenues based on talking to some of our providers, and Benjamin can update you on that. And then we also adjusted the new initiatives that we discussed during the last budget hearing, and of course we'll go over those one by one as we get closer to the end of the presentation. So with that, Mayor, if you don't have any questions before we start, I'll turn it over to Benjamin to start the budget hearing.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a quick overview, talk about kind of where we discussed yesterday, high level, 2 weeks ago, high level, then we'll get into the items that changed. So big picture here on the revenue side, we all know ad valorem is our biggest revenue source. The value that the Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser provided was just under $11 billion. That's a 10.1% increase from the prior year. I show the historical going back from 2018-19. One of the things I found interesting in looking at this holistically versus some of the other municipalities or even the county averages that we're compared to is in total it's about a 30% increase over that 5-year time period. That actually ranks third lowest amongst all 35 municipalities. So I found that interesting. The Dade County average is about 50%. So when doing these budgets and looking long-term, it's important to see the trends that we see here. We're actually increasing at a slower speed than the rest of the county is. With that being said, I still think when we get to the end of the slide, you'll see what we've been able to do. We have listened to the public comment. I've heard some of the comments tonight about take it easy, being respectful, sympathetic towards the taxpayers. Even with smaller increases in value, we've still been able to put a dent and lower the millage rate because we are very sensitive to that. Besides the ad valorem, our state revenue share has been strong. Sales taxes, the economy has been booming since the pandemic. In terms of charges for services, these are services that we charge for, let's say, our community center next door. We're starting to see the activity be at levels how they were prior to the pandemic at their highs. And lastly, interest income. There's a lot of talk about our reserves. I think we're very transparent in the slides about where they are. We do benefit, and one of the benefits of having those reserves is having strong interest income, especially when rates are high. 2 weeks ago, they were higher. They are still, I guess, historically high, and will continue to benefit from that. Here's how the revenues lay out from the different operating sources. You'll see here, obviously, the first line item, ad valorem taxes, is the most significant here. In addition to that, we get utility services taxes. These are taxes on things like electrical use, water use, gas taxes as well. Communication services taxes on things like cable TV, franchise fees on electric, charges for services, which I mentioned. Most of those have to do with our athletics, our community center, parks and recs. License and permits, intergovernmental, which includes our state share of sales tax, and lastly, interest income. I know we can see some outliers here if we go back to 2022, and I think one of the comments here was about the growth of the budget from 22, why it skyrocketed. In 2022, if you guys remember, there was a federal act, with the American Rescue Plan Act, which gave municipalities direct funding from the federal government. It shows up in this federal grant line of $6.5 million. It also showed out as a transfer out for accounting treatment. So I know it looks like there was a significant increase in the budget, but in reality it was accounting treatment and how to deal with that large one-time federal grant. This was requested from the council to say, where are we going to be at the end of fiscal year 24? There was talk about do we show July through July, or I went in line by line to say, here's my estimate. We have 10 months of data. Here's how I can project the last 2 of where I think we'll be towards the end of the year. And I think unlike in prior years, we're much closer in terms of our actual expenditures in comparison to our budget expenditures. So if we look here, my projection for the end of year operating expenditures is about $35.9 million. We've budgeted $37 million, so we're within about $1.2 million is where I think we'll end up, is my best estimate, so we can show you guys how we've been tracking so far based on those trends. Here's how the departmental expenditures show in a pie chart. If you take about half the chart, that's our public safety. Blue is police, red is fire. Very normal for municipalities to be public safety heavy. The green is it actually is comprised of 3 different departments, all related to the parks, recs, and open spaces. So it's parks and recreation, our community center activities, and our athletics fees is that green section. Light blue is public works. And then we move into our smaller departments, which finance, administration, and communications, transfers out to the capital plan, the council, clerk, and attorney. Small sliver in gray is debt service, and lastly, the planning and zoning department. I just want to be clear that the last time we showed this, we only showed it at a baseline budget. Now it's inclusive of everything. So it includes the proposed transfers out. It includes the transfers to the land trust fund. It includes those new initiatives. So the total operating budget here would be $43.4 million, and the millage rate needed for that budget would be 2.9794. So now that is inclusive of the initiatives that we're going to talk about.
One of the points raised a moment ago was about budget surplus. The transfers are the budget surplus.
Correct. So just so everyone's aware, what happens at the end of the year, we close our books, we get audited by an external entity, not internally, and we present the financial statements in March. After that, if there is a surplus, whether we underspend on the expenditure side or the village received more revenue than was budgeted, we bring that number to council, and there we make a decision. through over 2 readings, and we'll discuss, do we add it to our reserves? Do we earmark it towards capital projects? And we lay it out there with a plan, and obviously the council will vote on what to do with it, and we'll do the same thing in the upcoming year.
You missed a third alternative. Do we use the money to lower taxes the next year rather than keep spending the money in the prior year? Because that's one alternative. People are complaining about things are getting out of control. They can't afford to live here. A lot of people can't afford to live here, but believe it or not, there are a lot of other people that are on tight budgets these days. And the question is, do we have 3 million or whatever the number might be? Can't we use that to reduce the taxes going forward? Because basically we over budgeted, and when we over budget, we also undermanage. Because if we're not managing to a budget, we're not managing.
So I think, yes, I'll take us back to last year, same time, same place. There was an item for the budget to improve the St. Agnes field, and we had showed the millage impact. And we made the decision at the time to say, let's not include it to lower taxes because we are estimating that we'll come back with a budget surplus in March. When that budget surplus came back, we had the funding to be able to fund that project later. So we did lower taxes by not including it in part of our spending plan during September of the prior year. So yes, it is used to lower taxes because if you're using your surplus for projects, you don't need to raise new revenue to be able to do the same project.
Again, this is not your decision or Steve's. This is really council's decision of what to do with the money. So I'm really addressing it more to council than to Steve or to you. You know, what do we want to do? What's our philosophy?
We have this discussion every year.
Oh, the question is,
We have it twice a year, don't we?
do we manage our taxpayers' money better than we do, better than they do? Because we're implying by overtaxing that and keeping that money, that we can manage that money that we don't need better than they can, because we're not providing services at that point in time. It's going forward and building a surplus. So it's what we're implying.
But I think
that might be the way to go. I'm just saying it's something we really should consider.
I think, Councilman, I think what Benjamin has mentioned before, we have a very deliberate process where, you know, we get to look at this twice a year. We look at as we move through the budget process, as we are now, and then, as you mentioned, we have a third-party auditor come in. We identify where we are, and then once again in April and May, we have another deliberate process to go through that, determine where we want to spend the money, as we did this past year. Council approved it, and we move forward with those recommendations.
No, I'm not criticizing anything. I'm just bringing it up as something we should consider this evening. Do we want to use part of the surplus to lower the taxes more than we now have going forward with? That's all I'm really saying. And then that's a decision we make as council, not you or Ben. You know, that's all I'm saying. And I think we should consider it. That's all.
We always consider it.
Well,
and we will tonight.
Well, hopefully we do again.
Councilman Lund, if I can, I want to bring up this slide again, because if you see here in interest income, because we have the reserves, we're budgeting next year $1.3 million of interest income. That obviously helps us balance the budget where you don't need to increase taxes because you have that revenue source. So that's another example of, are we lowering taxes by having reserves? I would say yes. The interest income is a direct result of that, and now I don't need to tax to make up that same $1.3 million.
That's a perfect example of what you're saying, that you believe you can manage the residents' money better than they can. Because you're saying the money that, you're saying the money you have now, you're getting an X amount in return. What are you implying? What's your implied return going forward for the coming year?
About 4%.
4%. So you're really saying that, hey, taxpayer, we're going to earn 4%. That's more than you can. So we'll keep your money and we'll invest it rather than you doing it. Well, fortunately, I'm lucky. I earn a little bit more than 4%. I think a lot of other people do also. But I'm saying is that it's really a philosophical thing more than anything else. It's just philosophically, do we want to manage our money or we want government to manage our money?
And yes, so look, the only reason we hold reserves is not because just to make interest. There's many other reasons. I know Benjamin just flipped to the slide because I know what he's doing. There's a lot of reasons why we hold reserves, and the number one most important thing is we are a very vulnerable island with one way in, one way out, and to be prudent, we have to hold reserves.
Right. We have $4 million
let's talk about
reserves.
That $4 million doesn't go very far during an emergency. But
well,
why don't we have
banks will lend a lot of
Benjamin
money.
talk about some of the other reasons why we hold reserves?
No, one of the big ones, and we saw this last year, was when a windstorm took away all the sand on the beach, and we had to apply. It's very time sensitive to apply for a grant. Well, when we apply for a matching grant, that's a 100% return on the money. So I'm not claiming I can manage the money better than the taxpayers, but when we get a 100% match on the money by using the reserves to apply for a grant, I think we all can agree that it's a good use of those funds. The reality is you don't know when those events come up, and it's not, we have one shot of the year to tax. That's it. So to have the reserves to be able to apply for a matching grant like that is a good use of it.
And how much does a standby letter of credit cost? Quarter to 3/8 of a point?
Say it again?
How much does a standby letter of credit cost? A quarter to 3/8 of a point, which means that money is available from a bank by paying them a quarter to 3/8% per year, which will then have any much money you need for reserves, that you don't have to have the residents' money, that's all.
Benjamin, let's talk about the comparisons often are made with our budget with other entities, other cities. No, go back to the to where you were. One of the big differences, and I want you to elaborate on it, and the savings we've had over the years is our own fire rescue. The comparisons are very skewed when you look at that versus other municipalities because of the fact that we do run our own fire rescue. Can you mention some of that situation?
Sure. So for those that don't know, there's very few municipalities that run both fire and police. There's only 5. So there's the Village of Key Biscayne, City of Coral Gables, City of Miami Beach, City of Hialeah, and City of Miami. Those are a good comparable because what everyone else does is they pay the county for the use of fire services. The last I checked, the county charges about 2.4 mils just for the fire portion of the bill. And if you look at this slide, our entire village, which is inclusive of fire, police, public works, the whole gamut here, is not that much higher at just 2.9. So if we compare to those other municipalities that are offering both those services, our millage is significantly lower than the Gables, Miami Beach, City of Miami, Hialeah.
But you manage by looking at other cities, you manage by having an 8-man fire department.
Well, we get questions all the time. Why aren't you the same as something else?
Well,
So
it doesn't matter to somebody else. We have to manage what we have, not the other cities. They have thousands.
Exactly, but giving.
I'm not saying we're not doing a good job.
Okay.
I'm just saying you don't look at that
But
and
you
pat yourself on the back.
always want to be able to look at different entities and compare yourself. So,
Okay, fine. Then you look at how somebody else would manage an 8-man fire department.
Well, we don't have an 8-man fire department.
There's 8 men on duty, 7, one in
But
reserve.
just to give an example, Coral Gables says millage is 5.6 and City of Miami is 5.8. Now, is that something we should strive for? No, but it is an example of how other cities run their business. And I would say at a 2.9 versus 5.8, I think we're offering quite a bit of value.
All I'm saying to you is we really should be looking at metrics of managing our department, what our people do, how many people we need, et cetera, not comparing that to other cities and patting ourselves on the back.
We just
That's
use
all I'm
that.
saying.
We just use that as one example. We don't use that as
That's all I'm saying.
Can we knock off the premise that I think is fallacious, that we over budget intentionally because we think we're so smart at arbitrage? Let's get rid of that idea.
How can you get rid of that premise when it happens every year?
Yeah. It happens that budgeting is not as precise as you suggest. There are variables.
We all agree.
Thank you.
So everyone's aware there are certain budgeting principles in creation of a budget. When we have a new position, for transparency purposes, we show the full cost of that position. We show the salary, we show the benefits, and if someone's in that position for the whole year. Now, we don't have the crystal ball. People might leave for another job, they may retire, and that position may be vacant for a period of time. Therein creates some of those, most of the overages that we have to relate to personnel, which is our biggest expenditure. So we show the full cost for transparency purposes and budgeting conservatively, but yes, in reality is obviously different than budgets, and those events do occur.
Just so you know, I believe you and Steve are doing the best you can, and you're doing as well as anybody can expect with the budgeting. By the same token, anytime there's a surplus, the question is, what are we going to do with it, and how are we going to adjust? I'm not criticizing your methodology or your integrity or anything else. It's just a question of philosophy?
No, I think it's a good question, and every year we have an opportunity to look at it twice, in April and May. And, it's a very deliberate process, and we want to make sure it's transparent, and we'll continue to do so.
And again, waiting for the auditor is really, I guess I have too much confidence in Ben, but when he gets done with the thing in September, I'm not worried for the audit in May or June. I know what he's got there, and it's not going to vary by almost anything. So I'll rely on your numbers, and you can make those adjustments right away.
My colleague wouldn't always have said what he just said.
Why?
Because he lacked confidence in some of the predecessors.
Oh, God.
All right.
You're a godsend. How's that?
Okay. So here's a slide with our full CIP plan. As we mentioned the last time, let's pay attention to the different columns here because they are treated differently. The first column here is probably most important for the discussion tonight. These are the ones that are going to have impact on the millage rate that's set. So in terms of capital projects that affect the millage rate, we're talking about $2.2 million here. Some of the other projects can be funded from other revenue sources, including a general obligation bond for most of the undergrounding and utilities and construction of Zone 1, $21.7 million of various grants for certain projects, then about $2.5 million where we're able to use some of the village's other enterprise funds. These are our stormwater fund, our building fund to pay for certain projects. The next column, the CWSRF, is a Clean Water State Revolving Fund design loan. These are below market interest rates that the state of Florida, Department of Environmental Protection provide to do specifically for stormwater related projects. And we were talking about interest rates about between 1% and 2%, so about half the going rate. The next column is roll forward of projects that were not completed or expected to be completed in the prior year. When we talk about capital projects, these don't always fit in a clean one-year bucket. These are long-term projects where they have sometimes a planning, a design, and a construction phase. So there is a considerable amount that's being rolled forward to the next year. And lastly, $100,000 is coming from Miami County WASD for the design of Zone 1.
Benjamin, as to our assets, a question came up about the use of our vehicles. I mean, between you and the police chief, I think you can probably answer what that is in terms of those vehicles, the mileage and the number of years that we keep them, all that.
Yeah, so we looked at best practices in 2019, and we passed a resolution where it was recommended that we keep vehicles either 7 years or 100,000 miles. And I commend the council, and all the years I've been here, we've been funding that CIP to replace those vehicles. The challenge we had during the pandemic with supply chains was all those vehicles that we ordered took a year and a half, 2 years to arrive. So if you look at the state of the inventory of the police chief's fleet right now, obviously it's sorely behind where we need to be. So the $335,000 here is every year we're going to have to make these orders. And the other thing is the cost of these vehicles have gone up since we first passed that resolution in 2019. So it's a thing we're constantly looking at. We're behind where we'd like to be because of external issues, but I think we're catching up. We just got an order in recently for 5 cars, and we're expecting one to come in early fiscal year 25 as well. So we're going to continue making those routine purchases to get the fleet adequate.
Okay. I guess let's get to the question of the night. What are we doing to zero waste so that we can help and contribute further in that cause?
Can I say something on this subject?
You want me to?
Sure, we can hear what we're giving them, but I have comments I want to share about a little
Sure.
bit of the history of how we got here. Should I go?
Sure, yes, and I'll
right.
list down after you're done, yes.
Well, I guess I just wanted to offer us a little historical perspective that our goals towards sustainability have been obviously in place for quite a while. In 2017, we hired a consulting company to implement the sustainability plan that our Green Committee of Residents had created. And the goals were basically public outreach, education, and develop specific solutions for Key Biscayne. Their first year, their focus was, among other things, but I think this one's really important, waste management. From what we spent, we never got a full composting program like we have now. We now have a large, in my opinion, outsourced sustainability team, department, whatever you would call it, with a very large staff, all working for free. They're all volunteers. I believe that they're implementing sort of our longstanding goals. And what we paid in 2018 dollars was $44,250. And I believe that Zero Waste Culture has asked for 35. So to me, I think when we look at it in the perspective of other groups and different activities and what we fund, funding them under 35,000 seems to make sense. But if we take a look at it from a different perspective and say, since 2017, we've had these same goals. And in 2018, some of us that are sitting up here were willing to pay, and we did pay over $44,000 for similar services. We now know we have a proven commodity. We know what we're getting. My suggestion would be that we bump them to their full ask of $35,000 and be really grateful for all of the dedication and contribution they do beyond even just their composting. You see them all over really implementing the educational component and also the community building. You know, we hear people come up. Ann Tainter came and said how much the village has changed. And one of the ways that we feel that is losing connection to each other. And one of the places where people really come together is at the Zero Waste Culture tent and with the composting. So I would like to propose that we fund them at the full $35,000.
So no, thank you, Council Vice Mayor, and we'll go into the details on who gets what in a second. But I wanted to kind of go a little bit higher because I think a lot of people brought up this question, all of the above. Miami-Dade County, South Florida, has a significant garbage problem. You know, I think we all recognize this, and the county is struggling with it. If you've been down there anytime recently about the incinerator and other things that. But they also have a recycle problem as well. And we're working very closely with the Sustainability Advisory Board to find ways that we can better recycle. I think someone mentioned that we have about 9, maybe 10% actually gets recycled. So maybe there's a better way to go about this and maybe just zero in on those things that are actually recyclable. Yeah. And those are the sort of things that we've asked the SAB to look at and work with the staff on to come up with a better way to possibly recycle. But to go over some of the community sustainability programs that we fund, we currently put in $64,500 to different programs. Starting with Zero Waste Culture, we do have it at $35,000. We brought it up from what we had before. And I think one of the issues, and I think that we probably need to do, is probably just get better communication and coordination with them so we better understand what they're doing and what they're achieving. So I think that's something we could do better. And I've talked to Helena about it, and I think with the new Public Works Director, we'll create that relationship where we really truly see what they need and what they're achieving, and so that we can both consider it a victory as we move forward with this great program. Secondly, and you heard Michelle mention it before, we have $4,500 set aside for battery recycling, and it sounds like she wants to transfer that or at least make that a part of Zero Waste Culture. We'll talk to Michelle and Helena to figure out how that'll work. Thirdly, we have $8,000 for plastic-free KB, Key Biscayne, so that's also another sustainability effort that we're working. We give $5,000 a year also to Fillabag. That allows us, Manny Rionda and his team, to do about 2, sometimes 3 different events. And then lastly, we have $12,000 in the budget for a community garden as well. So that comes up to about $64,000 in our efforts to do sustainability activities across the village.
Okay.
Very good. One other, if I could just elaborate on Allison's remarks from back in the dim and distant past. One of the things that I see Zero Waste Culture achieving that was beyond anybody's thought of legitimate goals in 2010, when all of this kind of started, was behavioral changes, real societal changes, and being more conscious of needing less, wanting less, throwing away less. This is what we're seeing all the time come out of this effort. This is very important, very good stuff.
Yeah, especially the recycling piece. I mean, it was how many years ago that we went to the recycling plant on that village? 2019 on a field trip. I have never seen something more disappointing. You go there and all this good work you think you're doing, it's half of the trucks don't even end up going to the recycle plant. And then when they do get there, most of it doesn't get recycled. And what does goes on a barge that goes clear across the world, creating all kinds of, nasty stuff in the environment. So the stuff we see coming out of zero waste the answer isn't recycling, it's reduce. And just don't create so much waste.
Okay. You want to continue?
Sure. So now we get to, I guess, the decision making part of the night. So here's the new initiatives. It includes that $2.2 million we talked about in the CIP slide. The top line here is the new baseline millage number, that 2.7. So this would include, for instance, that $65,000 that the manager just mentioned for those community groups. It's already in here. It's already in that 2.7. So here's the menu of items. It shows the cost, it shows the impact to the millage, and we keep a running tab in the cumulative column to see where the final millage rate would land. The manager's recommendation, second from the bottom, would be that 2.9794 rate. In comparison to the existing rate of 3.1245, it's a 4.6 reduction. So I want to be very clear what that reduction means. It means for those that are homesteaded, it means the taxable value of your house can go up by 3%, but since that reduction is by more than 3%, you're actually paying less dollars out the door than you did last year. So it's something the manager and I looked at very closely. We are sensitive to, we understand the rising costs in condos, insurance, et cetera, and we wanted to do our part to help alleviate some of that tax pressure.
And as important as that we're doing is trying to reduce what we can reduce, but I just remind everyone that the rest of the tax bill is completely out of our control.
Yeah, so there's a slide here. It's the colorful one in the middle of the page on the right, and that's kind of a sample tax bill that you would have received a trim bill about a month ago, and on November 1st, you received that bill from the Miami-Dade County property appraiser. It's important to note the Key Biscayne portion is that portion on the bottom in green, and it accounts for less than a fifth of the total bill. I have looked at some of the budget meetings and hearings of all these other levying authorities. When we talk about the school board, we talk about some of these state agencies, the Children's Trust, the Miami-Dade County operating budget, and it looks like none of them are really budging at all on the millage rate. So even though the Village of Key Biscayne will provide some recourse, it's only about a fifth of the bill. So you might notice your total bill still goes up, even though the Key Biscayne portion would actually go down for those that are homesteaded. I also want to mention, besides the taxing on that bill, we do charge for two non-ad valorem fees, and those are just fees for services where it doesn't matter based on the value of your property. So for instance, for our single family and duplexes, we charge garbage and recycling services. That's a flat dollar amount. We are keeping that amount steady, same as last year, even though our cost to the village has increased. The second one is a stormwater fee. That's based on the square footage of the pervious area of the house and other characteristics of the house. That's also staying steady. So on those two fees, we're keeping them steady, and on the taxable portion, the tax portion, we're trying to bring it down in our recommendation, down by 4.6%.
So last time we had a couple of people come in saying that their tax was going to be double or something. Can you go over that?
Sure. So if the proposed rate is adopted, like I said, it'll be less dollars out the door than they paid last year. However, their entire tax bill, since we only make up a portion of it, you might not feel that difference because of all these other levying authorities that are taxing.
Right, but what we control, if we go through with this, it'll be a reduction. Can you give an estimate of what it would be per household or per property value? Give some kind of indication of where you would be.
So I think on the left there, it kind of shows at a 2.97 rate, we're talking about $298 per 100,000 of property value. So if we had a millage rate before of about 3.1, that would be $310. So it's not a significant reduction per 100,000, but obviously as you go up, the more expensive the house is, the more, I guess, relief there would be in terms of the reduction in rate.
How does that affect homestead
and non-homestead.
So for the homestead folks, where their value went up by 3%, they pay less dollars than they did in the prior year.
And non-homestead.
For non-homestead, it really varies. So I look at a lot of different properties when I get the detailed reports. Some properties go up 10%, some go up 1%, so it really varies.
What did our average in Key Biscayne go up?
So overall, including homestead and non-homestead, was 10.1.
Okay, so using 10%, how would that be as an average for?
That'd be a 5.5% increase.
So they would pay 5.5% increase in taxes?
Correct.
Thank you.
And then at the way bottom here is where we compare our, what we call all-inclusive millage rate, which includes all the different millage rates you see on that list. If you look at the bottom number, which is the total amount times your property value, it's about 15.6, and that is the lowest in Miami-Dade County. When we look at some of our neighboring municipalities, you can see where if you had that same house, same value in another municipality, what they'd be charging all in there. So proud to say we're the lowest and actually pushing. If you look at the top chart, that orange line is our millage rate. We're trying to push even lower. So blue is the value going up, and orange is us pushing the millage rate even lower. So we separate the two. That's
Ben, can you answer the question about the grants reimbursement?
Yeah, there was a slide we included last time, and it's important to note that grants have different phases, right? You apply for a grant, you can get awarded for a grant, and a lot of the grants have been awarded, but obviously you need to spend and make that expenditure before you can ask for reimbursement. So it's not that we're not getting that $15 million. We're probably in the process of spending our money and then submitting for
So we
reimbursement.
are getting the $15 million.
Once we're fully spent, we will submit all the paperwork, the accounting, the checks, the support.
But we've applied for the grant, and
we've been awarded.
And been awarded. So it's not.
It's in
that
process.
That we're just guessing and putting something, it's not an estimate, it's a real number.
This is a snapshot in time right now. It is in process.
Okay.
And we've known that, right?
Yeah, anything that's on that,
We approved, we
100%.
voted, to receive it. We've been talking about it.
Yeah, yes, and anything that's on, that sheet is a grant that we have. And there's another list, and you all have seen it, is what we're pursuing. Obviously, that's up to the granting agency to determine whether we're gonna get that or not. But once you're awarded a grant, the money is there, and then as Benjamin said, each grant has its own requirements to get the reimbursement once we're done.
It's not up to the governor to sign something or not sign something.
Once you're in a grant agreement, you're in a grant agreement.
I mean,
Yeah.
so,
it's not.
Once I'm saying, once
Can't be
we
taken
have
away.
it,
Yeah.
in spite of what someone else brought up this evening, has nothing to do with us.
No, unless the state defaults, and I don't see the
Well,
state defaulting anytime soon, but
I think we'll be okay.
yeah.
The question that was asked earlier about the HVAC units and the new initiatives, we talked about that the last time. We need to do that project. That's right?
Yeah, and it's on here for discussion or for the vote, yeah.
I think we discussed it
Yeah,
adequately
we usually
last
do.
time. But the point is, someone asked about it, they need to be replaced.
What's that?
HVAC.
So to get to this target millage, we basically eliminate the priority 8 item at the bottom of the sheet.
And we did, and we also identified 2 other items that can be funded by outside sources as well.
So
8 we talked about last time. The premise, I think, last time we were together was that we've done this, basically.
So let me offer a compromise here. I like the reduction in taxes that we're doing. I like the fact that we've taken that millage rate down. We have a meeting coming up on October 23rd, okay? And at that meeting, I think that should be one of the items that we discuss and we go on about. And let's have a good dialogue on that issue.
Which issue?
On this,
last one.
yeah, and the rest of the project. Let's have a robust discussion about this and about everything else. And I'm willing to find a way to put that money back in later on if that is the majority's decision. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, yeah, I think that's why we have healthy reserves, so that
Yeah,
we make
and,
decisions that way.
and I think that would be a perfect use of a reserve at that point in time, if we all decide that this is something that we absolutely want to do.
Well, could we get an estimate what it actually is gonna cost before that meeting, so you can make an intelligent
Yeah,
decision?
and of course, I mean, it's a big number, so it would have to go through a procurement process. And if we're talking about anywhere between $300,000 to $500,000, you would want to go through a procurement process.
But possibly can be broken down into a couple different tranches, like well cleaning, pipe, what do you call it? Pipe, X-raying.
And we can do that. This is a, an aggregate cost,
Yeah.
but we can
No, I
break it
understand
down
what I'm
into
saying.
bits
In
and
order
pieces.
to
Yes.
avoid the long, drawn-out procedure that we do to get prices, if we broke it down possibly, okay, one contract for wells, another contract for what you call, looking at the pipes. to see if the
Televising,
Problems there, so we have smaller contracts, and therefore we can do it quicker. That's all I'm saying. So by the time we meet,
But,
we can come
yeah,
back
I
with some realistic
agree.
numbers.
I agree.
And
If that's possible.
To prep for that discussion, which I'd love to do, I'd like to know what about this scope is either redundant or not redundant, and to what extent, and why?
Yeah, so.
Chris, would you come up with Roland as well?
Well, really quick, because I don't want to have this
Really quick.
discussion twice. That's why we set aside a long period of time on October 23rd to go through this.
We don't need this now.
No, Frank doesn't need it now.
Nope, okay, you're fine. I mean, the
can I
bottom
just say
line,
one
I think, Frank, is what you're asking is, council member, this was taken into consideration when we did the modeling with AECom. You know, the bottom line is what it was, and we feel comfortable, which is why I have it below the line, that this has been taken into consideration.
I think it'd be good to have this discussion.
On the 23rd.
And
when we get together.
it's up to the council to make that decision, so.
Now, can I say something? This is, I wasn't gonna say it, but we'll start now. Basically, I felt I've been misled. I've been misled by ACOM, and I've been misled, maybe you have also, maybe you haven't. But at the previous meetings with ACOM, when we started, I asked them, were we gonna use the gravity wells in your calculations? And they said, no, we're not, because the groundwater's gonna come up, and therefore they won't be very efficient. And I also asked them, are we gonna use the percolation of all the pervious material, all the lawns and everywhere else? And they said, no, we're not, because everything is gonna come up, and so we're not gonna consider that. So
Okay, Ed, I'm sorry. Do you want to do the meeting on the 23rd or not?
Well, are we gonna approve the 14 million tonight on the capital problem thing or not?
The proposal is to include everything up to this line.
Up to the Payne Community Center.
We're not gonna talk about the capital then now?
What are you talking about? We just talked about it. We said that we're going to have this meeting, we're going to have a robust discussion, and.
That'll be decided then.
And that'll be
On the
decided
23rd.
then.
Fine, okay then.
Talking
Okay.
about two
That's fine.
different
I
things.
understand that, fine.
Okay.
So the only thing I have tonight is, and this will floor you, Steve, I wanna add an employee.
What?
You still conscious?
I don't want one. I don't want any more.
Well, you might not anymore, but we got a new terrific public works guy. And we give him an engineer, we give him a capital projects, we give him all the people, but we only give him 3 people to maintain the village, who actually go out and do the work to make it clean and neat and nice and take care of the potholes and everything else. So he has another position which is unfilled for a superintendent, so in other words, working superintendent. And I'm saying, listen, if you really want this place to shine and people to really be happy, and make sure everything is painted and working, and when the question was asked before, was the HVAC maintained? Was the generators taken care of? If he has the proper people, he has the proper skill,
Ed,
the proper management.
people want us to do stuff?
I heard they do.
Oh, they do? Oh.
I heard they do. So all I'm saying is I would actually like to add a person to this proposed initiatives. At the same time, obviously, I've talked to Frank and I've talked to Eric, and they know I think it's a complete waste of money for a new captain, fire captain, for a new 2 policemen, which I think are a total waste. But when it comes to Chris, I'd like to add another person.
So right now, thank you for the offer, council member. I think we currently have 2 unfilled positions in Public Works, which we're trying to hire, the superintendent as well as an operations manager. So let us fill those positions first, bring them on, and then we'll have the people I think we need to do what you're saying. And secondly, we've brought on a number of contracts. We increased what we asked Brightview to do, and a lot of the work that they're expected to do is what you just mentioned, to go around, clean the grounds, clean the village.
So we have 2 positions that we need to fill that
Are
will.
those out of the office positions?
Yes.
For the most part? Okay, so you're maybe actually already have them budgeted.
Operations
just don't
manager is
have
going to be a
people.
working person or another office person?
Neither one of them are, the superintendent, if that person's a 50-50 person, operations manager is a working person.
He's a working
50-50 when I mean inside, outside, because
So it's already budgeted.
because that person's responsible to oversee a lot of the contracts, right? Because we do a lot of work by contract. So obviously that individual has to understand what the contract, the financial part, as well as, the legal parts of overseeing these contracts.
And the arborist position, is it
Or
in
overhead?
or out? Do we have an arborist position in, or horticultural, something that we've had and hired
Yeah,
over and
we're
over?
working to hire that person, yes.
So, but we're budgeted for it.
We are budgeted for it, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
What happened? We had an arborist. What happened? He quit.
We've had that in the budget the whole time, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah,
The
it's always
problem
been.
with the arborist is they come and they go.
They go.
So
They
it's
come and
not
go.
that we don't have a commitment to it, it's I'm gonna make a really bad joke, but they leave.
Move.
It's not even late yet.
Okay. Everybody good on this side here?
All the other new initiatives look right to me.
Okay.
What is the street lighting?
Can we just be clear on this number 8, that we are not doing it? We are, for the sake of transparency, for public engagement, and for us to
Correct.
fully understand what we're doing, we're going to give it its due at a special meeting, at which time we can propose a budget amendment to include it into this budget out of reserves.
Yes, Vice Mayor, and we'll have it broken down as was
Yes.
requested, bit by bit, so we break down the $575,000 into exactly what that consists of.
Don't we have, we have a reserve amount, I think they said about 400,000, Ben, from the storm system from last year?
Yes, we could pay for this out of the stormwater fee, yes.
That's no problem.
Okay.
Just one question about the stormwater fee that we reset based on the permeability. It's adequate, I think, to perform the enhanced maintenance, true statement?
Yeah, all of the operations and maintenance for the stormwater system is in the stormwater fund, and it's adequate to pay for all the maintenance.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget in front of us?
I guess the question is, do we want to use the surplus from last year to reduce the budget this year? I mean, the tax rate this year, not the budget.
That surplus has already been allocated, as was allocated in May.
I mean, what we did
When we were
just
given
now-
the list of choices of additional things to do, we committed to it in May.
We just went through all the new initiatives, and with one exception that's deferred, we think we need to do all of them.
So Ben, we're not going to have any money left at all at the end of the year, correct?
At the end of fiscal year
Yeah.
24? Yeah, we will.
Next week, whatever it is.
We will.
We will have money left, okay. It's not been committed.
No.
It's been committed.
No, it's not been committed.
So how much will we have that's not been committed?
So I showed the slide where I'm estimating we'll come in about $1 million under
Okay,
the
so $1
budget
million,
expenditures.
okay, fine. So the question is, do we want to use $1 million to lower the
You
the
can't,
millage,
you
that's
can't use
all.
that, you can't use that money until it's
$1 million that
identified.
hasn't come in the door yet.
Sorry?
$1 million that hasn't been, it's not collected.
Yeah, we can't use that money until it's identified by an auditor, and then we come back in mid-year to use that money. And this is government law. You got to follow the accounting principles. You got to make sure the money is there before you spend it. We got to make sure we follow those rules.
Mr. Attorney, any other things that we need to cover here on the budget?
The only thing I would say is, the manager has proposed a, lower millage rate, which equates, to a lower budget than the first reading. So we will have to eventually adopt an amended resolution to provide for the lower millage rate and then adopt the amended ordinance with the lower budget. So I just want to put that on your table right now.
Okay, so where do we go?
It's your pleasure if you want to table the budget and move on to the millage, you can do that.
Why don't we do the budget, because the millage has to pay for the budget? Let's adopt the budget.
You can't, under Florida law, the first substantive determination is you have to vote on the millage.
Wait, say that again? That's
The
exactly-
first substantive determination you have to make is on the millage.
How could that possibly be?
That's why we always table the millage and go to the budget and then go back to the millage.
Yeah, we've done that
That's-
before.
That's what we do it every year. And in fact.
This is
and
exactly reverse.
It is, but I can tell you, and Benjamin knows, every year with the Department of Revenue, we have to show them that that's what we do, by the minutes.
What's the statutory citation? This doesn't make any sense.
It's gonna change the law.
Yeah.
Is it 199, 143?
No, I think it's 200.065, but let me see.
Vice Mayor, on the
Just
budget.
wanted to make sure that our last discussion, we discussed the clerk and the new budget includes the salary now that she has her certified municipal clerk. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to review that and is approving it in this budget as
Yeah, I
within.
did review them, fine.
Yeah?
With the-
Yeah.
Okay.
Consensus, thank you.
Thank you for doing that work.
Excellent job, by the way.
For the benefit of Councilmember Kaplan, it is 200.065. And the statute says that the governing body shall adopt its tentative or final millage rate before adopting its tentative or final budget.
This
Okay.
is so interesting.
All right, so we go to the millage.
You need to table the budget ordinance.
Do I have a motion
Motion.
Second.
For what?
to
Those in
table
favor?
Millage ordinance.
Table the budget
You
ordinance.
didn't think I knew.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, I move the 2.9794.
Untable, I'm sorry, untable the millage resolution.
Okay, I thought you did.
I
Sorry.
tabled the budget, you all tabled the budget ordinance, and you need to untable the millage resolution. And the second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and there needs to be a public hearing.
On the millage, public hearing is now open. Seeing no one come forward, public hearing is now closed on the millage.
And then,
Go right ahead.
We need to amend the, because the reso's got the millage from last meeting, last hearing.
You need to read it into the,
Correct.
Go
We'll
ahead.
have to amend, I think the millage that you're proposing is 2.9794.
correct?
That's right.
And then, Benjamin, what is that percentage increase over the rollback rate? So we can read that in. 5.01%. Okay, so then the rollback rate is 2.8372 mils, and the final millage rate would be 2.9794, which is 5.01% over the rollback rate. Correct? Okay.
So if I amend the reso to provide for everything you just said, would that be in order?
Yes.
is that a motion?
Motion.
It was a motion. I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Go ahead and go back to the budget.
So the budget with that millage rate as proposed by the manager, I believe, is 43.40 million, right? Or 43.40 million, which was on the slide. That's right.
I'm sorry, did you untable the budget ordinance?
Not yet, go ahead.
Motion to untable the budget ordinance.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So I think the motion would be to adopt a budget as presented by the manager tonight. And that's a $43.40 million budget, right? Okay.
Is that clear? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember London,
No.
Vice Mayor McCormick,
Yes.
Councilmember Sardinius,
Yes.
Councilmember Vasquez,
Yes.
Mayor Roscoe,
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan.
Yes.
The ordinance is approved on second reading.
Okay. The only other thing that I have is I understand that Manager Williamson will be a little bit older next tomorrow. So we wish him a happy birthday ahead of time here.
Just a little
Hey,
bit. Just a little bit.
feliz cumpleaños.
Happy birthday to you. Happy
birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Steve. Happy birthday to you.
And on that bad music note, I call for adjournment.
Do you know
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With meetings adjourned.
that was the first performance in the converted flex space.